Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at all the extra stuff that came with Weta Workshop's GKR Heavy Hitters. This is actually the Kickstarter box, and there's some extra stuff in here that was paid add-ons, but it also contains all of the stretch goals and things like that. And they gave us a nice thank you on the back. The box is filthy. The flat black they used on the box unfortunately scratches up really easy, so I got a lot of marks on mine, but it serves its purpose. The box is way bigger than it needed to be. They made it the same dimensions as the actual game box. It's just a little bit thinner so that you can put future things in here too as they come out. I really love to see new corporations with a new heavy hitter and sport units and cards and so on, maybe some new pilots and things as an expansion pack, and there's plenty of room in here to store everything. So let's get right in and take a look. Now everything in here has changed up a little bit from the way it was when it got delivered to me. I ordered my stuff separate, so like the Hapsi can and my Wasteland Expansion actually came in separate boxes, but I think they were supposed to come in here. I've heard other people got theirs in this box. They all fit in here, so that's not a big deal. But because I didn't have all that stuff in here, this little insert is just a cardboard divider. Was kind of all out of whack, and everything was just kind of thrown in here. And it really shows you how much extra space there was, but everything's in here now. So the first thing we have is our exclusives rulebook here. These are from the Kickstarter stretch goals, and explains how to use the various components that are in here in your games. You have the Hapsi themed buildings, the orbital shock, additional card for your deck building. There's the mercenaries, and then the terrain components. Not much to it, but it just basically tells you how to use this stuff. So underneath here, we have probably the coolest thing in here are the plastic player boards. Upside down. And these will replace the cardboard punch-out ones from the original game. Have the same deck slots. The cool 3D damage in here with the bullet holes and cracks. Those little plastic energy sliders actually work better on these, I think, than the cardboard ones. And there's also a slot up here. I don't know if you want to put cards in there. It's got a couple different uses. But kind of a neat thing. They're decent thick plastic. They're made of that lighter color like the building tops are made out of. I've seen a lot of people already go through and start painting these. I might do that at one point, but I think they're fine as they are. The nice thing is they made these slots just big enough to fit sleeved cards as well, so you don't have to worry about that. And you get 4 of those, one for each player. So next we have our Hapsi buildings. These are just replacement buildings for ones from the base game. They just have the Hapsi theme on them there. So the whole building basically looks like it's already spray painted and tagged. It's worth noting these don't come with a base or a cap, so you're going to have to use these to replace existing buildings that are already part of the base game there. The next really cool thing of note that not a lot of people realized we were getting are the dice. So a lot of people surprised by these when they received them. And these are the sponsor themed dice, and the 6s on them are actual sponsor logos. I'm not going to remember the names of the sponsors off the top of my head though. I remember Pink Elephant, that's Hapsi. Not sure on the other two. I feel bad. Somebody will yell at me in the comments, I'm sure. But you basically get 2 of these to replace the black attack dice for each player. So you can roll your choice of sponsors instead of those base dice that came with the base game. Next we have the terrain tokens, and these are just tiles that set on the board to change one of the hexes into a different terrain. There's sinkholes, unexploded missiles, craters, oops, and rubble. And each of them have special rules that are outlined in that book, and they just add a little more variety to your game, let you customize your maps a little more. The only downside is they are single-sided. They could have done double-sided and done something cool in the back too, but can't argue they were nice, they were free. Big thing that came with the extras here was the cards. Got a whole bunch of cards here. And the first off ones here are the Mercs. And they're foil. They foiled the entire card though, text and all, which makes them really difficult to read. I wish they had done just like maybe just the artwork in foil, or maybe the big letters from the stats or something. But there they are. I sleeved them because I'm afraid the way the hit point trackers work. And there are these little plastic clips here, and they actually hook right on the side of the card. And you slide them back and forth to keep track of the hit points. And I was afraid, especially on these foil ones, that it was going to scratch the hell out of the cards. So we sleeved them. It seems to be okay. I know I said in the other video we were going to see if that worked, or possibly use cubes. The sleeve seems to do the trick okay, and it's a nice bit on there. So we may just keep them that way and see how it works out. Then we have the Merc Zappy, Splody, who blows up. It's kind of funny. Morty, and Snipey. And there's special rules for bringing these into play. Basically, you can hire them, and they go out and do your bidding as if they were one of your support units. Then we have our mercenaries themselves. Kind of disappointed that these were just a base flat gray plastic. All the other, support units were at least colored. So I might do these in like a dark gray and then do like a silver wash on them or something, just to make them different. But cool models, and again, they're all unique. That one's Splody there. Still learning which one's which. I believe this is Snipey with a big rail gun on him. And nice detail on these though. I think they actually have more detail on these than they do on the actual support units, which are kind of funny. But the one thing that some people are not too fond of though is to designate who is in control of a particular Merc. We have these little tiny pegs, which is something else to keep track of, and they're super, super tiny. So you take the peg and you put it in this little hole on the top, which some of them are kind of a tight fit, and that designates who's actually controlling the Merc at the time. They could have made the slots a little bit bigger and just used the billboards like they did for Big Little Buddy. I think they would have been a little out of scale to these though, so I'm not sure. Just not a huge fan of the way they went about doing it, but it serves the purpose. It's just an extra little fiddly bit you have to keep track of. The other thing we got here is this set of cards, and there's one for each color. There's a lot of them that have artwork on the back too, so it's hard to see. And what these are foil versions of the character cards. And again, they foiled the whole card text too, so it's hard to see. It's funny because they only did the front side, not the back. So you have the fluff stories on the back and the character on the front with their special ability. Just like the character cards that come in the original game, and they did them all in all of the factions. They're just in foil now. It's a neat thing. I was never a huge fan of foil cards. I usually ended up in like trading card games like Magic. I would trade in my foils to get the non-foil version of the card and like an extra booster pack or two, because I didn't care for them. But some people do. They do kind of look funny, especially if you look at them from the side. This is the one here, the Orbital Shock is a new card that you can add to your decks. And this one's all foil. It's actually quite a bit thinner than the other cards for some reason, so it actually stands out in the deck. It's not so bad sleeved, but if you don't sleeve these and you put it in the deck, you can almost always pick this card out. So it's kind of marked in that respect, but I think everybody's going to sleeve them anyway, especially with the foil one being in there. And it's kind of like a Orbital Strike. It's a one-use discard, and just one extra card to add to your arsenal, and of course that's in here for each of the factions as well. So they all have a new card to add to their deck building. So the next thing we have in here is a paid expansion, and this was our Big Little Buddy, who's a giant killer robot of his own. He's like a class in between a support unit and a heavy hitter, and there's cards that get shuffled into the sponsor deck, and as you're drawing your sponsor rewards throughout the game, you have a chance of drawing a thing that lets you control him. And there's special rules here that explain how to add him to your game and how he works, as well as the benefits and rewards. It's a cute little add-on. I almost didn't get him, but then I decided I liked the way the game looked so much I ended up buying everything for it. I'm glad I did. And he actually came shipped in this box, and they had that that rule book actually folded up in here in the box with it, which is kind of disappointing because it has a big crease in it now. But there's a look at Big Little Buddy. I don't know how much detail you're going to be able to see because of the color of the plastic. Try to get him in an angle, but pretty neat. He's made of the softer plastic that the heavy hitters are. And then he has this big slot up here, and this is what I was talking about with the Mercs. You actually put one of your billboards on there that's used to tag the buildings to designate who's in control of him. And it also gives him a big smiley face right there on the front, because that's what's on the billboards, which is kind of funny. But he's definitely a cool add-on. I suggest him for anybody who's looking at the game. Definitely pick up the extras, because they add just that much more variety and more replayability to the game too. You don't have to use them every time. And then Big Little Buddy came with his own deck of cards here. Big Little Buddy backs on the cards, which is kind of neat. And there's his stat line. Again, you're going to use one of those little clips to keep track of his hit points. And it tells you how to use him there on the bottom. Then you have his weapons. He actually has choices of weapons, unlike the support units, because he is a little bit bigger. And unlike your heavy hitter, where you have to randomly draw cards, you can have access to all of these all the time, and you just pick the one you want to use. He has the Laser Amigo, the Bullet Buddy, and the Mine Mate. And the Mine one attacks the target and all adjacent places. The Bullet Buddy one can attack multiple targets as long as they're in range. And the Laser Amigo can hit the target and everything adjacent to them, which is kind of cool. And they have different stats and speeds as well in there. And then you have these cards, which actually go into the sponsor deck. And when you draw one of these cards, you get to activate Big Little Buddy. That's the brought to you by Buddy Finder. Just no more lonely times. I love the sponsorship things in here, and the little fluff text at the bottom. Rental friends starting as low as $12.99 a month. Awesome little addition, and like I said, he's just a cool thing to add to your games for a little bit more flavor. You don't have to use him every game, but when you do use him, there's just that little extra. So the next thing in here is actually another paid expansion. As I said, mine came separate because I ordered mine later on, but it's our Hapsi can. It's actually the same size as a standard can of soda. It's even got the nutritional values on the back there, which are 0% of everything. And the really cool thing about this is it's actually a fully functional thermos that you can use, as well as being a caddy for your custom dice sets. And this comes with the faction themed dice, which has 8 in here for each of the factions. And then there's the straw to go on the bottom of your lid. The only complaint I really had about this is that the orange and yellow on the dice are extremely close together under specific lighting. You can tell them apart there, but in a store lighting, I mentioned it with cards before, these are even worse. But in game store lighting where things are pretty dark, you might not be able to tell. Not that it's a huge difference. But there's your faction logos, which are on the 6, not the 1. Because 6s are what you're trying to roll, and the sponsors want to be there when you do. And they're actually engraved in there and then painted, so you don't have to worry about it brushing off. They kind of neat. Not really something you have to have, but another nice addition just to add more fun. So you grab the faction dice for the faction you're playing, and these are going to replace the standard white dice that came in the starter set. And I should note, as I mentioned, those ones were engraved. The sponsor logos here on these ones are screen printed, so I want to see how well they hold up over time. I haven't had a good experience with printed dice in a while. And then, like I said, the can, it's actual metal thermos insulated. You can use it to drink out of. I plan on just using mine to store my dice because that's where they came from, but that, and it just looks funny having a Hapsi can on the table while you play. Especially if you get a sponsorship card. Next up we have this box, which actually, again, mine came separate because I ordered it later on. I didn't order it in the original. But I'm pretty sure they do come in there. There's plenty of room for them. And this is the Wasteland Expansion. And it's another, not really needed. This one actually has a game component to it, where the other ones were just cosmetic only, like the dice. This one actually adds something to it, which is why I ended up getting it. And here we have our rules for it. And these sentry guns are actually the new thing in there. The rest are cosmetic upgrades. So in the box, there's a couple different things that come in here. Right off the top, you get these cool sponsor logos. And these are stickers that are going to go on the buildings, which we'll get to in a minute. But lots of cool sponsorship logos in there so you can customize things. These are our sentry turrets. And as an optional rule, if you decide to play with these, instead of putting your billboard on top of a building when you take it, you can put these little twin barrel sentry turrets, and they will shoot at people who approach the building to try to re-tag it. Kind of a neat little thing. You get 4 of them, I believe, for each color. 3 for each color in there. They were kind of what pushed me over the edge to actually getting the add-on. And the next thing we have in here are holographic billboards, or so they toted them. I was actually kind of disappointed by these. They're supposed to be a transparent plastic instead of the normal solid colors, but they're so dark and thick. They're barely translucent. So there's not really that big of a difference between these and the ones in the starter set. I was really hoping for just the clear tinted plastic, and so they were kind of disappointing. But you do get a replacement set of those if you decide to use those over the originals. I don't know why they had a smaller bag of them in there too. I think it's because there's an odd number. They did in the starter set when you got it too. There was a handful extra. I think it's because of the number of them they produced or something. So we got our cards that go with our sentry turrets. And these basically go alongside your support units, and when you deploy your sentry turrets, you can then start using them as your weapon speed on the top. Interestingly enough, while they do the same damage for each faction, they do have different speeds for the various factions, which I thought was kind of funny. Haven't compared them to other weapons to see if it really even makes a difference, but they do use a scale 1 to 1,000, so there could be no difference whatsoever other than just which one fires in which order when it comes to them alone. But they're a neat little add-on, and gives you one extra option when you're tagging your buildings. And of course they come in the 4 colors. Then we have just a box full of plastic. And these are actually pretty cool. They're replacements for the buildings in the original set, but they're actually plastic instead of cardboard. So you can paint them, you can add those sponsor decals to them, and they look really cool on the table. And then you have the caps for them here. Again, silly pet peeve thing, but they made the caps out of that lighter plastic. The buildings are out of the darker plastic. The real drawback here is they do not come with extra bases, which was really disappointing. They could have thrown a couple extra bases in there, at least allow you to have some extra buildings in your games. So unfortunately these have to replace the original buildings unless you want to find some other way to put them on the base to represent when they're destroyed, and you tag the rubble for who destroyed the building. They do look really cool though. They're a lot more sturdy than the cardboard ones. The crack seams don't seem to... They seem to fit together pretty well. And they'll look even better once they're painted and they have the sponsor logos on them. And so then we have a whole pile of building toppers. And these range from just regular building towers to go on the tops of them to actual sponsor logos. They don't have any actual effect in the game, but they look cool. There's a Hapsi man, pink elephant. I see Bad Taco in there. And these fit right into the tops of the new plastic buildings here, just to make them a little more unique on the table. As I said, they don't have any actual game function, although they do encourage you to come up with your own rules for them. And then for those plastic buildings, you actually do get them in all the different sizes. There's a full 10 buildings in here to replace the ones from the original game. A lot of stuff in that box for being such a small box. And one last one here is a special promo card that was put out for sponsoring a podcast, and it was kind of a reward for doing that. I managed to pick mine up from BGG because I found out about it later, but one extra card to add to your sponsorship deck, and add a little bit more fun and flavor to your game. Can't go wrong with more extra stuff. Then we're going to look at all the extras that come with the game in various forms. Kind of hard to get them all into frame there. But would like to point out again, some of these were Kickstarter exclusives, like the Mercs, the foil cards, the sponsor themed dice here, the plastic player boards, and the Hapsi buildings. The GKR Raw Talk card was a promo. And then the rest were from paid expansions, the Big Little Buddy expansion, the Hapsi Can and Faction Themed Dice add-on, and then the Wasteland expansion over here. So just so you know what you're going to be getting, if you haven't gotten yours already, most people have by now I think. But just wanted to let you know that those 3 in the back there are paid add-ons, so they were extra. So if you didn't add those, you're not going to be getting those, but you should get the rest of the stuff if you back the Kickstarter. I was originally going to do separate videos for each of them, and I just figured it'd be easier to lump everything together. Sorry if that's confusing. If people want, I can still go make separate videos for the different paid expansions. I may still do one for Big Little Buddy, because I do plan on doing one for each of the factions to go a little bit more in depth on their strengths and weaknesses. So I could throw Big Little Buddy and maybe the Mercs in there as well and do a video for them together, if people are interested in that. Anyway, a whole bunch of cool stuff in here. Anything that adds more variety to a game is generally good as long as it doesn't overcomplicate things, and I think these do a good job of that. The rules for using the Mercs and the Big Little Buddy are pretty easy and straightforward. They mesh well with the base game. The pegs that go in the Mercs are a little kind of fiddly. I wish they'd come up with something better for that, but it's something you can deal with. The screen printed dice for the sponsors, have to see how those hold up over time. And everything else, though, is really cool. As I said, my only real disappointment of the entire thing was the holographic boards that came with the Wasteland expansion not really being transparent, which isn't a huge thing. But if you're paying extra for a cosmetic upgrade, it would have been nice to have them be a little bit more of an upgrade over the originals. And then the not having bases on the buildings, which they told us ahead of time and knew that was coming. I was just hoping maybe they'd throw a couple in there just to make some people happy. I may end up coming up with some special rules so we can use those and the regular buildings anyway, just for the fact that it'll allow you more board design if you have more buildings to mess around with as well. The terrain tiles are going to be an interesting add-on. I have not played with them yet, but they have some cool things in there. Just overall, it's a lot of fun things to add to an already fun game. GKR is quickly moving up the ladder down to my top games. It's definitely, I'd say, in my top 10 already, which says a lot since I've only had the game for like a week and a half now, and I already love it that much. And I really hope that they do come out with faction-themed expansion packs in the future that add a new heavy hitter, some new support units, and that would be a great thing to add onto the game. There's plenty of room to store it in the Kickstarter exclusive box, and it would just add more variety. And as I said, anything that adds more variety, I'm all for. I think the only other thing that they add as an add-on for the game that I didn't get was more of these faction logo sticker sheets, so that you could customize the Mercs, or they actually had a painter's edition which came with unpainted heavy hitters. Did not get that either, but those would be kind of cool to customize some things. I think I got plenty here, so I'm okay with that I didn't pick those up. And I hate painting, so that's why I didn't pick up the painter's edition. The Mercs here, I'll have to see what I can do with them. Like I said, I'm probably just going to do them a solid color like the other support units in the game, with maybe a, I'm thinking black with like a metallic wash, or even a dark gray, just to make them stand out a little bit and have some detail to them. I have no idea what I'm going to do with Big Little Buddy. I will think of something with him. I'm going to have to work on that one, but overall, lots of cool stuff to add to your game. If you're a fan of GKR, you're going to love this stuff. Hopefully some of it becomes available some point in the future for people who didn't back and want to get in on it. That's the only thing I hate about exclusives, is that people who want this cool stuff, especially the Mercs, the rest of it you can do without. The player boards are cosmetic upgrade. The terrain tiles are kind of cool because they actually add a game component. You know, the Mercs are kind of cool because they add a game component. The other three are paid add-ons, so I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to get those. But the big deal is the Mercs and the terrain tiles. I hope that there's a way for people to get a hold of those later on. For those of you who find the game later on and pick it up and still want to be able to use those things. I hate exclusives. My theory on it is you're rewarding the people who backed you, but you're punishing people who find out about your game later on and really want to get into it. There's a couple games that I refuse to buy at this point because they have Kickstarter exclusives and they're almost impossible to get without paying insane amounts of money. Anyway, that's a look at everything that came in the extras and add-ons for GKR Heavy Hitters from Weta Workshop. I think I've already pointed out enough that I absolutely love the game. I love the extras, so I don't need to go there anymore. But definitely, if it's something you're interested in, check it out. It should be available for retail soon if you didn't back it. And as always, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.